Mark, why do you think that after years of advocacy, and you mentioned you and I have been involved in this for a long, long time, but there's been a lot of brilliant work done by Christian legal academics, really eminent people who are well qualified, highlighting Australia's international law obligations to protect parents' rights and religious freedom. Why has all this been totally ignored? Is what we're seeing by Mark Dreyfus and the government now just resorting to the use of raw power just to crush freedom of religion at this time?
Well, I'll just go back and be clear. The ALRC is a report to governments, and actually a government report, and the government hasn't responded to it. So I'll just be a little bit careful about that.
Yeah, look, that's me editorialising a bit, but Mark Dreyfus did set the terms of reference, and I think he's pretty keen on this becoming law. But that'll be my comment. But go on.
And we'll see where this lands. But certainly, as you said, there have been enormous amounts of energy, time, and money and resources spent. I think the Prime Minister talked about more than 10 inquiries over the last period and 70,000 submissions. 70,000 submissions on this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an enormous amount of work that's been done. Mm-hmm. We've had some very highly qualified lawyers trying to provide sensible solutions that actually find a way forward, that provide appropriate protections for people of faith and balance those appropriately in accordance with international law with other human rights. There are solutions around this, and those solutions are actually put to the Law Reform Commission. Now, they've been very selective in their use of international law and their quoting of international law, and they've just not really, it seems, fully engaged with the proposals that have been put to them, or for ideological reasons have simply rejected them. There are solutions to this. There's been a lot of work in good faith by faith groups and their advisors to find a solution that can be enduring, that can have bipartisan support, and can put in place a mechanism that we're not relying upon the courts to try and make these decisions on an ad hoc basis. And that gives no one any certainty and clarity, and just means all our resources are spent in litigation rather than education. We don't want that. We want the clarity. There are ways of doing that. We've put forward those solutions. All it needs is for the government to actually adopt those solutions and put them in the law.
I think the problem, Mark, from what I've seen, is that those solutions which various legal academics have proposed over the years and yourselves involve tolerance from the other side. The willingness to let Christian schools be Christian, but they don't want to do that. They want us to conform to their particular worldview. And I think while ever that's the case, it's going to be difficult. But Mark, the Prime Minister, speaking of how we can find a way forward, the Prime Minister has said he won't legislate unless there is bipartisan support. Now, the opposition hasn't seen the legislation properly yet. They're not willing to commit. Is the best option going forward some sort of a stalemate that preserves the status quo?
Well, depending if the alternative is a bad law, that's absolutely the best option. There are ways forward that provide a bipartisan solution, that provide a better option, where the current provisions, which are a very broad exemption, is written in the language of the 1980s, which, by the way, Mark Dreyfus had no problem with when he introduced changes to the law in 2012. But those now seem to be unacceptable. We understand that. We want to get through that. We want to make sure we can be clear with people about what we do need. We need the ability to employ staff who share our beliefs. We need the ability to teach what we believe. We need the ability to make sure we can run our schools as communities of faith with some standards around discipline and behaviour that reflect those beliefs. If we can't do those simple things, then we really cease to be faith-based schools as we know them, and parents are wanting them.
No, that's
now,
right.
There are ways of making that protection happen that don't involve necessarily the current legal exemptions and would be, I think, clearer for people to understand and a more helpful solution. If we can't get that, then I think the status quo is better than going backwards as the Law Reform Commission would propose.
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, if we don't get tolerance from the other side, I can't see a way through. But the other potential solution the Prime Minister has floated this week, and what's been a chaotic week up in the Parliament, is the possibility of doing a deal with the Greens to pass the legislation. Now, that's obviously provoked an alarming reaction from you and your sector. You guys have put out an open letter to the Prime Minister and the Attorney-General today, urging them not to betray religious schools by doing a deal with the Greens. It just shows how powerful the Greens have become, that a thought bubble like this from the PM has even said out loud. We're in dangerous territory, aren't we? Just to help our viewers understand why it would be so dangerous for the Prime Minister and the Labor Party to team up with the Greens to pass a solution for your schools?
The Greens have no desire to see faith-based schools continue. They've made that clear in their previous policies. They have no commitment to religious freedom. They would be imposing a solution upon us. Again, that wonderful tolerance that has no tolerance for alternative views. They would simply not allow us to be continuing to be faith-based schools of the kind we are, to hold beliefs around sex, sexual orientation, gender, or marriage, or relationship status. And they don't want those views held, and they will just stamp them out.
Yep. I want to try and help our viewers and listeners just understand a bit more about the politics of all this, why it's so fraught. And I appreciate you giving time to this. And I understand if this is a bit sensitive, you've got to maintain relationships in the Parliament. I understand that. But the Liberal Senator Dave Sharma, who's recently been instated by the Liberal Party back into a Senate vacancy here in New South Wales, when he was last in the Parliament as the member for Wentworth, he was one of 5 Liberals who sided with Labor and the Greens to torpedo the last attempt that was made back in 2022 to try and protect religious freedom. So he helped bring that down from his own side, siding with Labor and the Greens. Another Liberal warrior for LGBTIQA politics, Tim Wilson, was last weekend pre-selected to contest his old seat of Goldstein at the next federal election for the Liberals. So the Liberals are clearly happy to have people in the Parliament who don't support the freedom of schools and parents to have these rights to educate the kids. Now, how do you, Mark, how do you navigate a political dynamic where not only Labor, the Greens and the Teals are hostile, but the Liberals' powerful left faction is also not in the corner of parents and religious freedom?
Look, it's certainly a challenging political dynamic. And as you said, we do try to maintain good relationships with all parties. Even the Greens would be in discussions with around some of these issues. It's the challenge is to actually help people understand where international law actually lies and where good policy lies in the centre of this. For most of the MPs, they actually are committed to good policy. It's only a small number of ideologues who will reject that out of hand. And we're still hoping and praying that there will be enough of a majority across all parties to have sensible and balanced policy in this area.
No, that's good perspective. Mark, like you, I've been around Christian schools all my life. I went to a Christian school from the age of 9, sent my 4 children to Christian schools. Always really appreciated the sector. I'm a product of it myself. I know that principals and boards are influenced by culture and the politics and the media, and they're often risk averse. They're worried. There's pressure to compromise to avoid negative headlines, etc. Do you see this as the Christian school sector's Daniel in the Lion's Den moment? And do you think principals, boards, and those churches who do run schools as a ministry, are they ready to stand up to the government and protect their students and parent communities from this attack on their freedom and faith?
And that's a great question. I mean, it is really the line in the sand moment. It won't be something that happens overnight where we'll suddenly, not be able to employ staff. It'll be a long, slow decline if these measures come in place. If we can't find ways of employing staff who share our beliefs, if we can't teach what we believe, then there really is no point in having so-called Christian schools that can't be authentically Christian. And our boards, our principals have indicated previously that this really is the line in the sand for us. We will look as hard as we can to see how we might be able to comply with the law. If we can't, then really we may have no option but to consider that. And certainly that's a question we've been in discussion with our schools around. I don't think anyone's considering closing their Christian school tomorrow or next year, but we will need to have careful advice and careful consideration of what the future could look like under these sort of proposals.
Well, I'm sure your incredible public advocacy and that of your colleagues that are working with you, and the media you guys have generated in the last week or so, and in the years leading up to this current crisis has been phenomenal. I'm sure it's inspiring many principals and boards and leaders in school communities. Let's hope that continues. Just finally, Mark, on a bit of a lighter note, you and your colleagues were up in the federal parliament this week delivering hot cross buns to politicians and the media. Do the politicians get the irony of crucifying religious freedom in the lead up to Easter?
Look, we weren't trying to have a particularly political message around that. We were just trying to really share, our belief in the good news of Christ and his resurrection at Easter. It seemed like an appropriate time. Not always do we have a sitting week in the week leading up to Easter. So we thought we'd take this opportunity, and certainly there was no one who rejected our hot cross buns. Some wonderful, high quality Canberra hot cross buns, and they all seemed to be well received. But certainly the irony was not lost on us, as we were trying to be good witnesses to Christ and his good works in what's a very challenging time for religious freedom.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful gesture, Mark, that you guys did, and it's a great witness and a great way of showing goodwill, particularly it's important in this holy time of year. Mark, really appreciate you being so generous with your time and being willing to unpack some pretty thorny issues on what is an incredibly important debate for everyone of faith in this country. So thanks again for your time, and wish you and your family a happy and a holy Easter.
And to you and yours. Thanks, Lyle.